The scene opens up where the protagonist is told that it had already been half a year since they started living in that ghost town. They had often said, home was where the heart was. Their days went by quietly. They had started to think that perhaps they just might have a better life there than in the royal capital. In the next scene, the people were seen plowing the field, and it was said that this was like hell on earth. They kept doing their jobs energetically, but suddenly, a person was seen lying unconsciously due to tiredness, requesting water. There was another demi-human speaking on behalf of that person to let him rest a while, and two of the muscular demons were standing over there. Just then, a person sitting in the shed commanded subhumans to put their back into it. That person was introduced as Gapoli Greed, who was the head of House Greed. He stated that subhumans were slaves and working themselves to death for mankind was all they were good for. He told about human supremacism, that it was the teaching of Babar Ramuism, mostly highly endorsed by the royal capital. Out of the 4 leading houses within the royal capital's House of Lords, known as the Supreme Four, House Greed was ranked the highest. It has been bestowed vast swaths of Aeon by the royal house of Baruma. They were nobles among nobles. The scene came up in the area which was allotted for construction of the 28th vacation home. Gapoli instructed to that guy who was lying to put him to the work. The demons were taking him as per orders. Just then, someone came there addressing Gapoli as father. He opened the door and seemed like he was in anger. When the person walked inside, the servants recognized him that he was Sulfate Greed, who was the second son of House Greed. Gapoli asked Sulfate, since it has been a while, if he was to take it that Sulfate had gotten bored with working like some poor lowlife at the academy. He further declared that if Sulfate had changed his mind, he might deign to offer him a region of land or 2. Sulfate yelled to clarify that he did not come there to discuss those things. Rather, he talked about how Gapoli was sitting there in luxury, while the people of his land were suffering from the heavy labor and taxes levied by him. Gapoli so casually replied that theirs was no different from other noble households. Sulfate furiously asked him not to be ridiculous and made it clear that if things went on like that, they would all starve to death, which was why he requested him to improve that wretched situation at once. Gapoli shouted at him to keep his mouth shut. He smirked and called Sulfate a runaway child who thinks that he knows about nobility. He claimed that everything he has done was proper and righteous. Moreover, he added that a child that cannot obey his orders was no child of his, so he disowned Sulfate then and threw him out of the royal capital, outer walls and southern gates. Sulfate was begging for Gapoli just to hear him out one more time, but the guards did not allow him to go inside. Sulfate was trying to make his point, but one of the guards cleared to him that by the orders of Lord Gapoli, he would never again be permitted to set foot in the royal capital. Sulfate then walked out from there with the disappointment that he was screwed, then that his former father's mercenaries barred him from entering the city. He could not get back to the academy, or his dorm, and he did not even have any money. He thought helplessly if he could just contact the academy principal, then it might be possible he got some solution. And in the spur of the moment, a girl called Sulfate on the road, and Sulfate recognized her as Eldina. Eldina stated to him that she heard he was chased out of his family home, so he rushed over there. Sulfate wondered if she came all that way because she was worried about him. Eldina was Sulfate's colleague and one of his few friends. Eldina worriedly asked him if he was okay or he was not hurt. The fact that Eldina was able to maintain a teaching job in the academy, even in the royal capital, where subhuman racism was very prevalent, was because Eldina was a special case, and therefore given extra privileges because of her great magical ability. Sulfate met her in the academy, which was famous for accepting anybody as long as they have talent. After they graduated, they both sought a job at the academy. Eldina told Sulfate that he was fired. He remained shocked. Sulfate then understood that as she mentioned it, he had heard that Gapoli's influence reaches even the academy, and it seemed that he had already made use of that. Eldina said that the principal would like her to tell him that he was sorry. Sulfate was contemplating how sweet Eldina was. Just then, some people over there commented on Eldina that she was hot as hell. They were talking shit about her, that since she was subhuman that means they could get her real cheap. Sulfate had boiled with anger to listen to those nonsense comments. He hugged her to protect her from those guys, but in the very next moment, he just realized and got detached from her. He panicked and apologized to her. A while after, they both sat at some place where Eldina asked him what he was going to do then. When she noticed that Sulfate could not figure it out, she stated to him that if he would like, then there was a frontier city which was quite far south from there, called the Green Convent, and her parents were part of the group that rules. Sulfate thought that subhuman races ruled the land, but keeping that aside, he felt that if it was a parliamentary system, then it might work. Eldina further added that if they went there, Sulfate could get another teaching job by her commendation. She then asked his opinion about the plan. since without even asking from Sulfate, Eldina had given him a plan, and so it came to be that he went out in search of the Green Convent. Eldina and Sulfate went shopping for some clothes, and from there they took a carriage to reach their destination. As Eldina bought Sulfate the clothes, he apologized to her about relying on her for each and everything. Meanwhile, Eldina was okay with that. But still, Sulfate was thinking somewhere that he really had to earn some money when they got there so he could repay her. The royal capital fades in the distance. Sulfate was contemplating about the Green Convent, that it was a frontier city where humans and subhumans govern together, and he guessed that it might mean the humans and subhumans there live in harmony. He felt that it would be nice if they could live there. He then suddenly realized that Eldina works at the Academy of the Royal Capital, and besides, she was way out of his league. In the midway, Sulfate and Eldina had a meal. After a while, it was 10 days later, and they both were on the road to the Green Convent. Some people stopped there, and they recognized Sulfate. This was disclosed that they were Gapali's mercenaries, to see whom Eldina remained astonished. Sulfate, being stunned, thought if Gapali's mercenaries were chasing him all the way there or if Gapali actually was trying to assassinate his own son. But he determined that he had to clear an escape path for Eldina at least, and in the very next moment, he took out his weapon. That was how it turned into a fight. But in the middle of that, a girl with a tail was seen coming from there who hit those mercenaries and fell into the arms of Sulfate. She happily exclaimed that she was glad to see him unharmed. The girl was the former House Green housemaid Unio, who was a cat person. Sulfate surprisingly asked her why she was there. She replied that she quit her job at House Greed to come with him. She stated to Sulfate that he was her only true Meowster. That was why she requested him to let her be of service again. Sulfate was stunned to see her that way. Furthermore, Unio showed that she brought the young Meowster belongings and she had made it so far. She also brought some potentially useful supplies. Sulfate thanked her as she even got a horse-drawn carriage. Unio hugged him and replied that it was nothing as long as it helps him. On the other hand, Eldina was confused to see both of them. She asked what the nature of that relationship was. Unio instantly stood away from Sulfate, and they both were surprised at Eldina. Afterwards, Unio exclaimed blissfully that Sulfate was not to be underestimated, since he even managed to bring along his future bride. Eldina and Sulfate were shocked by her guess. Sulfate then clarified that he and Eldina were just friends, even though they were mere colleagues. Unio saw him for a moment. She further apologized to him and said that it seemed he had a hairball for a head. Besides, the three of them saw the mercenaries lying there fainted, so Unio asked Eldina and Sulfate to get out of there before it was too late. They all then sat in the carriage and moved ahead. After that, Sulfate was thinking while looking at the map that even if they ran, there was only one highway there, and that was why there was a high possibility their horses would catch up eventually. He pointed on the map that there was going to be something, and he immediately got up to tell it to Unio. He showed her the direction. She replied that there was an old, unkempt highway there. So, Sulfate said that perhaps it still goes all the way to the Green Convent. Eldina was trying to tell which kind of road it was, but before she could say something, Unio followed the instructions of Sulfate. Thereafter, the carriage entered on the road which was surrounded by the dark, horrible trees. They kept moving ahead, and 2 days passed. On the third day, Unio was seen lying, and she stated that it appears they have lost their pursuers. Sulfate gave an idea to set up camp for that, with which Eldina also agreed, and she added that the horses need their rest too. After a while, Unio stated to Sulfate that his shift was over and he got up. While Eldina was sleeping, Sulfate said that they slept like rocks for the first time in what seemed like forever. After some time, Sulfate analyzed and told Eldina when she woke up that it looked like if they could keep this pace up, they would reach the Green Convent in just 2 days, and that was assuming the rest of the road still exists. Unio stated that if that was what worried him, then she disclosed that she had a feline they were going to be okay with, and she saw the tracks left by people that occasionally passed through. After that, they kept setting up camp. While doing the work, Sulfate got top marks in archery, and yet things were different in practice. Unio listened to him, and she asked him to just leave it to him if he was hurting. She seemed too confident and excited to do the work. And when they further moved on, as they went along, they borrowed stables from the ruins of an old town. Eldina looked out of the carriage and she stated that they should all be able to sleep together there. Unio added that they should be able to get a good rest there if they cleaned up the place. The time passed as it was, and 6 days later they arrived at their destination. Eldina blissfully exclaimed that she would go make arrangements for Sulfate and Unio to sleep in her family's home. They all were then in the frontier city, the Green Convent. While entering the city, there was a person who clarified that they could not come in. He recognized Sulfate and told them that they had gotten word from the royal capital that Sulfate was not to enter that frontier city. The three of them were astonished to hear that news. Just then, Eldina shouted at that person and asked him what was the meaning of this. The person replied that even at her command, it could not be allowed since it was the strict order from the House of Lords. Sulfate there understood that those soldiers were dispatched to send out the word. On the other side, Eldina was kept fighting. She furiously cleared that she would not be turned away by someone of that person's rank, so she asked him to bring his commanding officer, and she also put the condition that if he did not do so, she would complain directly to House Greed. Sulfate was trying to stop her. He told her not to worry about him and claimed that he was okay, since somewhere he knew that if the ruler of the region was to go against the word of Gapali, then Alina's parents would not be let off the hook so easily. Sulfate again thanked Eldina and asked her to stop as he was okay. Eldina was surprised at what she was saying, so she asked him to just let her talk to her parents because she was sure that she would persuade her parents. Sulfate yelled at her due to worriedness that if she defied them any further, that could get dangerous for her. Just then, someone asked Sulfate what that was. Sulfate recognized him as Kuro. Kuro was an ogre who was a peddler Sulfate's drinking buddy. Kuro had a country question to Sulfate that if he could not see that he was peddling, but he asked the main question to him if what was the matter of if he was in trouble. When Sulfate told the entire story, Kuro understood that he came all this way only to find out that not only could he not get into the Green Convent, but he was also barred from entering any city at all. Sulfate told the fact that his father does not tolerate people who defy him, so they would be turned away at the gates of not just the cities, but most likely every village they come across. Kuro took a moment to think about the matter. As far as he could understand, he guessed that Gapali was meant to say Sulfate could not live where people live. He then asked Sulfate, since he was sure that he must have come across some abandoned village or other along the highway, so he asked if he did not see a place worth staying at for the moment along the way. Sulfate took a pause to rewind. He then thought that the old ruined town could be that place. Kuro further asked Sulfate to take whatever supplies and tools he needed for him to go. Sulfate, being embarrassed, apologized to him since he did not actually have any money. Kuro instantly denied to him that there was no need to have to pay a penny. He reminded him of the time when he gave him that medicine for free, so he asked him to consider repaying the favor. Sulfate replied that it was just some medicine. He conjured himself and he barely needed any reagents to pull that off. Kuro was trying to convince him, so he told him not to look a gift horse in the mouth. Sulfate realized that whenever he was in trouble, the ones that help him were all subhumans, as Eldina saw him losing his job. So she told him about her hometown and came with him all this way, and Unio went so far as to spend her hard-earned money to help him. He was feeling too overwhelmed, but along with that he wondered if he could ever repay the help of those wonderful people. He was just hoping for the day when he could become a person that could help somebody like they helped him. Thereafter, Sulfate stated a word to Eldina that one day. He and she were definitely going to be ever again, and to you too. Back then, the House of Lords Academy was not especially bad when it came to the subhumans, so when Sulfate joined the school, it was like he was running away from home. Moreover, earning his tuition while studying at the academy made for a lot of hard times. Sulfate went into his flashback when he was being asked why a noble kid, the second son of House Greed, would join the academy, and there she met Eldina, who was actually the first elf he had seen that was no prostitute. Through their studies, they became good friends, and together they decided on the path to become teachers. He was so happy to feel that his days with Eldina at the royal capital were so much fun. He came back to reality. He thanked Eldina for everything she had done for him and moved ahead towards the carriage. Eldina screamed to stop him, and she clarified that she was coming with him. Sulfate stunningly asked her if she was really okay with not going back to the academy. She replied that she took some time off since they were going to the Green Convent, and she kind of wanted to research some magical stones there. Kuro then stated that it seemed good to go again, and he left from there while telling Sulfate to share a drink with him when things cooled down. And with that, Sulfate and Eldina with Unio headed for that ruined old town. Sulfate was sure that the threads of Gapali's power did not expand to that place too. After some time with the regular moving on the way, they finally reached that ruined old town. When Sulfate saw Unio looking at that place being so focused, he asked her what she was thinking. She replied that she thought that if they cleaned it up, they could make it work. In that place on the first floor, there was a living room, a dining hall, one room, and a bath and toilet which needed repairs. On the second floor, there was another living room and 6 rooms also. Unio showed Sulfate that there was something upstairs. Sulfate looked there and he wondered to see that. When they went upstairs, they could see the whole town from the roof, and they were very happy. This was the diary of Sulfate, a man who lost everything but decided to rebuild it all new. and God only knows how it might end. The frontier life had begun, and the three of them were holding the boxes to rebuild the place. In the next scene, the horse was standing tied with the log, and Sulfate came to Eldina to wake her up. She woke up and wished him good morning. After getting kicked out of the Green Convent, they came to that abandoned village and decided to live in that wooden house. So, that day was the start of their new life. Sulfate holding the groom and Eldina holding the water bucket were ready to make that place livable. Sulfate asked to clean the house first, and when they entered inside, they both remained astonished since Unio was already there who had cleaned the house very neatly. Unio was dancing out of happiness. She stated that she could then bring her luggage in there. Sulfate asked her if she did get enough sleep. She replied positively. She showed us one by one in everyone's room separately. Sulfate was feeling so grateful for Unio since it looks like he did not have to find a place to sleep because of her. Thereafter, the next task they took up was to check the water tap. Unio said that the water heater was not working. Moreover, she asked him if it could be fixed. He replied that the water was running, so if they clean it and replace the magical stone, he might be able to fix it. Unio stated that while he did, Eldina and she would make dinner. For the dinner, Unio asked Eldina to cut the vegetables till she put the water on. While they were making dinner, Sulfate was doing his stuff. He felt that the magic stone was just out of power. After a while, dinner was served. Eldina revealed that everything was made by Unio, to know which Sulfate thought that Eldina could not cook. After having the meal, Sulfate was so surprised with the taste. Thereafter, Unio disclosed that the current issue was food since they only had 1 month's worth that Kuro gave them. So she said that she investigated the area surrounding the house. They went in that area which was a field, and Sulfate noticed that it was in pretty rough shape though, but still, there were vegetables growing there. He took out his stick and guessed that it was the time to use this. He showed the stick ahead and spoke to remove the weed. He used the wind magic and earth magic to till the field. Unio was amazed to see his magic. She gave him a compliment that he was a great wizard. Sulfate chuckled. He felt that great wizard was a bit much to be called. In fact, he could only use beginner level magic because of this. The class he taught at the academy was magical pharmacy. He was being told earlier by someone that he could not find a type of magic that suits him. Ponyo further stated that they would have to get meat from monsters. Sulfate said that with this, the food issue was solved. Unio clarified to Sulfate that she would leave the fieldwork to him and his magic, and she herself would go look for usable furniture in the other houses. In the next scene, Eldina and Sulfate were doing their magic in the field, and Unio was going in the house. After some time, when Eldina and Sulfate went inside the house, they both were surprised to see the interior. It was seen that the water problem in the bathroom was also resolved. On the first day of their new life, they solved the need for food and housing, and they even got warm, running water. Sulfate was glad that he could get the water heater fixed. Unio suddenly went into the water being naked, and she asked them also to get in together. Sulfate got awkward. He told both the girls to get in first, and he left from there. While having a bath, Eldina was thinking that she kept considering Sulfate, and Unio were really close, but she was still confused. While Unio stated that she was happy if Sulfate was happy. Moreover, she felt that Eldina and Sulfate looked good together. When Eldina was addressing Ponyo with due respect, Unio asked her to just consider her as a friend and call her casually. Afterwards, Unio was happily singing that she would be the mistress. Some time later, when they both were done with the bath, Sulfate came there, and Unio apologized to him for making him wait. But she told that the bath was so good. But Sulfate asked about Eldina since she was looking very quiet. While bathing, Sulfate wondered to think if what they both talked about, since he could not get any answer from them. When he was done with his bathing and he came out of the bathroom, he was seeing their good tuning and felt that they seemed to be getting along well. 1 month later, there could be some kind of turmoil there, and Unio informed them that someone was coming. It was the whole army along with the horses, and the person who came to Sulfate's station told him that it looked like he had been doing pretty well. The person was Kuro, who appreciated Sulfate for doing a lot in just 1 month, since Kuro brought the food and supplies. But after seeing Sulfate growing so well, he stated that the stuff he bought was not even needed. Sulfate replied that they would definitely still help, but he clarified that he did not have any money. When Kuro told him that he did not need any money, Sulfate clearly rejected that he would not accept that. Just then, Kuro gave an idea to him about selling his medicine. Sulfate and Eldina both took a pause. After that, Eldina asked Sulfate if he knew what kind of herbs they would need. When he replied positively, she further told that there was a room in the field. Sulfate asked if they could do this, but he was banned from entering the city, so he guessed if they could trade. For that problem, Kuro gave the solution that there was one place Sulfate could go, and he claimed that he could show him where it was. So he asked if how about the idea and Sulfate blissfully agreed with him. A few days later, the plant started growing. Kuro promised to come back in a month, and he also claimed that when the medicine was ready, he would come to pick it up. So for the preparation of medicines, Sulfate and Eldina went to look for a place to work. They were looking for the room where they could execute the idea. Eldina asked him where the tools were. He replied surely that Unio brought them in with his luggage. After some time with lots of hard work, the medicines were ready. 1 month later, after Kuro came to pick them up, they traveled with him northwest for 2 days. Sulfate saw the village at the foot of Mount Gorn, which was the demi-human village. When they roamed around there, Sulfate was amazed to see its beauty, which was quite unbelievable. The village was seen as empty since there were no people on the road. Sulfate contemplated where everyone was. Just then, a demon warned Sulfate and others not to come. He was holding the sword in his hand and had long hair with sharp teeth. He angrily asked them if they wanted to die. Moreover, he warned them to leave this village. When the demon was going to attack Sulfate, Unio came in between and held the demon's throat, causing his sword to fall on the ground. Unio stated that she did not know what was wrong with the demon, but she determined that she was going to kill him. The demon understood that she was not a common cat and thought that they might kill him. Sulfate came ahead with his weapon, since he heard that many races of demi-humans could be transformed into demonic beasts, which was why he recognized him. The demonic beast stated that he did not know why they had come to such a remote place, but he made it clear to everyone that nobody would miss them if they did not come back. Unio accepted that he might be a demonic beast, but she smirked while asking if he would be able to defeat her. While she was going to attack the demonic beast, Kuro jumped in between and clarified instantly that these guys were his customers. The demonic beast calmed himself down, and he again turned into a demi-human. He was then introduced as the village at the foot of Mount Gorn captain of the guard, named Googs, who was a dog man. Googs apologized to them. He gave his clarification that a lot had happened and he had been frustrated. Kuro asked Googs about the state of the village, since it was strange, so Googs explained that there was an epidemic. He further explained that all the sick were protected in the church, but unfortunately, everyone was too afraid to come outside. He said that they were a garrison that was sent from the capital, and he was one of the few that did not get infected. He added that there was a constant hatred towards the other races. Just then, someone came in a rush to Google with the news that Yom passed out. Googs remained astonished to hear that news, and he panicked all of a sudden. Kuro calmed him down. He asked about Yom. Googs said that Yom was the only sister in that village who knew how to mix herbs. He then asked Kuro if he had a product. There, Sulfate stated that if it was possible to market there, then they brought a large quantity of medications with them. Googs asked him if he came to sell medicines, as before he asked anything further, the people told him that they have to do something soon. Googs then directed them to lead Sulfate and others to the church. The scene shifted to the church where a lot of people were lying there infected. Eldina wondered to see that number of people infected. Googs immediately went to Yom, the sister of Tulsuria's faith who was an owl man. Googs told that she was in charge of that church. When Sulfate noticed her condition, he got to know that she was suffering from the high fever, and there were the red spots on her neck too. He recognized that the epidemic was a Depah fever and with the same bacteria. He could make a drug with the medicine they brought. Even Eldina also agreed with the epidemic which Sulfate recognized. Further on, Sulfate told Unio and Kuro to make as much ice water as possible and instructed them to take a few drops of the medicine to prevent them from becoming infected. But Sulfate found it strange since he had never heard of a massive outbreak of Depah fever before, or he thought if there could be some kind of cause behind it. Besides, he decided to put the treatment first. He then asked me to drink the medicine, and also he told her to use healing magic if possible. Yom took the medicine. She was very grateful for him, but she apologized to him since she had no money to pay. Sulfate cleared to her that he did not need money, as for then it was an emergency, so he asked her to use them. Sulfate quietly then asked Eldina if that was okay. She replied positively, and added that it was okay if he wants it that way. Suddenly, there was something happening unusual to see, which everyone wondered if what does that mean. It was disclosed that a human was helping other races, so there must be something behind this. But Eldina protected Sulfate. She requested everyone to stop, and she clarified to them that Sulfate was a human, but he was a good guy. Sulfate held for a minute. He then stated to Eldina since his presence was making the sick feel uncomfortable, which was why he left everyone's treatment to her for them. Moreover, he decided to investigate the source of this infection, as the same thing would continue happening if they did not stop it. He further told Googs that he wanted to investigate a little. After that, he along with Googs went on the investigation. While they were on the way, Googs informed Sulfate that 5 days ago, the corpses were already burned and buried, and someone left a lot of rotting flesh there. They both arrived in front of a heap, and Googs further added that the first to fall ill with a high fever were those who dealt with the dead. Sulfate contemplated that DPA bacteria reproduce in the carrion, so there was no doubt corpses were the source of the infection. But he asked if anyone in the world would bring such an amount of corpses. Even Googs did not know that, but he surely stated that there were no corpses until that day. Someone went out of their way to put the rotten corpses there and placed them right in front of people's eyes, and someone threw the dead there. Googs suddenly claimed enthusiastically that he would cure everyone of this disastrous disease and give the village people a medicine they could never afford and drain them for all they were worth. He further asked Sulfate if he was the son of a bitch. Sulfate replied negatively. He stated that he did not want to believe there could be such a terrible person. When they were having a heavy conversation, suddenly their attention was caught by someone who came out of nowhere. The person was in very bad condition who was asking for the help. It was a girl to whom they both remained surprised. Sulfate was amazed to see her since this was the first time he had seen that race. Even Googs was thinking that he had never seen her before, nor did he know where she was from. He warned the girl that this was a dangerous place. She fell down due to unconsciousness. Sulfate noticed that there was a lot of her blood there. She was wounded, because of which they had to use healing magic. When he was going to use it on her, she asked to help her little sister who was lying in the cave. When Sulfate was treating her, Googs asked him if he was sure since she was a little girl so she might die. Sulfate saw that the girl's body was hot and she had red spots as well, by which he concluded that this girl also had DPA fever. Googs asked to take her to the church, but Sulfate refused to do that. He stated that the place was saturated so he would treat them there. He asked Googs if he knew who those girls were. Googs replied that he did not know, as he had never seen them before. Sulfate was thinking that the medicine he had was a general-purpose antipyrate. So he decided that he must give the antipyretic some healing magic of antibiotic and bactericidal nature. He knew that DPA fever was a serious and deadly disease due to high fever. Moreover, if the medicine does not work, the girl's life would be in danger. He then made the medicine ready and gave it to the girl. As soon as the girl took the medicine, her red spots from the throat got disappeared, to see which Googs remained shocked since it worked, which means it had effect. Sulfate exclaimed satisfactorily that the removal of the DPA bacteria was successful. When Googs stated that they were cured, Sulfate declared it has not happened yet. He told that they were still weak, and he had to continue with the healing magic until they wake up. Googs asked surprisingly if they had to stay until then. Sulfate asked what he could do. He suggested that Googs might go back to the village, and he would be happy if he could tell Aldina about this. After that, Googs went to the village, and Sulfate was still with those sisters with the hope that they would recover soon. The day passed. The very next morning, Sulfate felt that Googs was back. But it was Unio outside there. She was informing Sulfate that her work there was done. Googs was also with her. He was trying to stop her from going to Sulfate since it was too dangerous, and he told her that it was not possible for her to do something so irresponsible. Unio claimed to him that he was the only dangerous one there and asked who it was who raised his sword against them in the first place. When they were having a fight, Sulfate came out to see them, and suddenly they stopped. All three heard some voices, and it seemed like those girls were trying to say something. Sulfate immediately went to them, but there was something totally different over there. The one of the girls was turning slowly their state, and she turned into the big demon while asking them to free her sister. The girl became the demon who roared at them. When she was coming at them, Sulfate wondered if she was a dragonute wyvern. Unio claimed that she was already there to handle that, and she requested Sulfate and Googs to run away from there. Sulfate was in disbelief to know that there were still dragons alive in that world. Meanwhile, Googs was pulling him to take him away. A long time ago, beyond the now closed gate of hell, most of the dragon clan migrated to hell, leaving only a few. Dragon scales and bones were still traded at a high price as rare weapon material. When Unio was fighting with the dragon, Sulfate requested her not to overdo it. The fight was getting intense, and in the middle of that, the dragon roared, from which something came out of his mouth. Sulfate wondered to see that it was the corrosive poison. Since the little dragon does not spit fire, instead she spits corrosive poison, and Sulfate read it somewhere about corrosion, so he understood that the pile of carcasses was not just thrown there. When the dragon kept roaring, Unio clarified to her that she was not her enemy. On the other side, Sulfate was trying to solve the mystery, as he judged from the girl's sister's wound that she might have turned into a dragon to protect her from some Daramount boar. When the existence of dragons was known, they could have many rivals, as Sulfate heard that if he was a Seriwu, neither the beasts nor any other wild animal could touch. However, those sisters were still young, so Sulfate was sure about them that they must have spent their whole lives hiding. After thinking all of that, Sulfate stated to Googs that he needed to get closer to talk to her, so he asked him for help. But Googs was afraid, and even Ponyo was also worried for Sulfate. But without thinking for a moment, Sulfate went in front of the dragon, and when Googs was there for his help, the sword got broken. Thereafter, Sulfate went very closer to the dragon and told her that he wanted to help them too. He stated that her sister was fine. Her wounds were treated, but she was still in danger because of that it would take a while to complete her healing. The dragon got calm. She asked him if they helped them, and she apologized to them for whatever she did. Sulfate replied that it was fine, and he asked to take her sister to a safe place. The dragon then again took her body back as the human, but she was naked, because of which she was feeling so embarrassed since her clothes got broken. Sulfate gave her his coat for then, and he took her sister in his arms. Her sister was protecting her since she was so possessive for her. Afterwards, they all went to the village back, and Eldina immediately asked him if he had found the source of the infection. When she saw those girls, she asked about them. Sulfate replied that it was a story for later, and regarding the infection, he gave them assurance that it would not happen again. He further asked her if she would be treated in the church. Eldina replied that they were using the healing magic, but they had a problem with medicines. When Sulfate walked inside the church, he saw that patients were increasing. Eldina told that the nurses and relatives of the parents have developed the symptoms. When Sulfate gave the medicines to Yom, she apologized to him since the people over there stated that they could not understand why they had to drink what Sulfate says. Moreover, they were more comfortable to wait for another help. Googs heard all of those gossips. He assured that this was a good medicine, and he claimed that if they could not acquire them, he would buy them. Yom told Googs that it was impossible. So, Googs asked her not to worry since he was the type of man who saves money. He then asked the price of the medicine. Sulfate showed the sign of 3 and asked about that amount. Googs guessed if it was 30,000. Someone stated that the 2 digits were different. Googs further guessed shockingly if it was 3 million. To hear that, Sulfate instantly corrected him that it was 300, and to know that much cheap price, everyone remained astonished. Yom shockingly exclaimed that it was very cheap. Sulfate was about to reply to her, and just then, Kuro stated to him that for demi-humans, getting decent medicine at the frontier costs a lot of money. He added that the magic was almost exclusively human property, so they have little chance to learn. That was why he had helped him many times with his medicine. Sulfate thought that once his former father told him that the medicinal magic was good and one could earn money by selling expensive medicines to the wealthy. But he was not studying at school for that reason. When everyone received the medicine and Yoni took a sip of it, he bent in front of Sulfate since she was so grateful for him because that medicine would save everyone. Sulfate was glad that he learned medicinal magic. Tomi again confirmed with him if he was sure that he agreed with that price. Just then, someone came there announcing that the Commercial District Association would give Sulfate a subsidy. The person introduced herself as Aliyah, who was the aunt person and general secretary of the Association of the Commercial District. He disclosed that Kuro contacted him and she came to deliver the documents that she created in order to obtain a subsidy. She was going to announce the subsidy amount. Just then, Yom spoke up that Sulfate had helped the church a lot and they could then buy medicines without worries. Aliyah stated to Sulfate that it was on Kuro's recommendation. Yom also said so, and it also seems that the villagers began to trust him. Meanwhile, Googs seemed uninterested in all that. Aliyah further gave Sulfate a form to fill at first. Sulfate asked if it was not a village. She told that it was legally a settlement. While filling the form, Sulfate wondered if he would use his real name, might create a problem. Kuro asked him not to take it too seriously. Further on, Sulfate wrote his old nickname, which was Gossage. On the other hand, Yom amazedly stated if why her medicine not got subsidized, to which Aliyah replied that her medicine does not work. Just then, Unio came to inform Sulfate that she finished distributing the medicine, and Eldina also added that they were done there. Sulfate was also done with the form, and when Aliyah thanked him by calling with his nickname, Sulfate requested her to call him by his real name, since all his friends call him that. Aliyah then asked him if he had decided where to stay that night. Sulfate took a while to think. He then replied that the medicine ran out, so he was thinking of going home. But he thought that he could not leave the girls who were the cause of the disease in this place. He saw that her sister was still sleeping and they needed a place where they could calm down and recover. The path fever could not yet be cured with existing medications, so he have given them a little extra. After that, he cleared that he would be back when he had the medicine ready. Aliyah also stated to him that she would be waiting.